All right. Gustavo, thank you so much for making the time. I'll be really looking forward to this conversation. So I'd love to use this conversation to help people outside the region understand Latam games market more clearly and also better understand your journey and what Gamescom Latam means for the broader ecosystem. So I'd love to start very broadly. Um, how would you describe the Latin games market today to someone looking at it from outside the region?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you. We are constantly trying to expand the boundaries of our event, which is basically like a global event that happens to take place in São Paulo, Brazil, and that has a bigger concentration in Latin America, but it's very global. We have companies from all over. We have companies from China. We are soon to announce a very big presence from a Chinese company that I cannot reveal yet, but in the next week or the next 10 days, you should be hearing about it. So yeah, everybody from China, you should be coming here, and I'll tell you why. Okay, about your question. The Latin American market has been, with the exception of Africa, which is still a very small market, comparatively speaking. I'm not saying that it's a bad market, it's just saying that it's quite small, so it's easier to grow a lot. It's the only market in the world that continues consistently to grow two digits per year. So when I started my journey with games events, there were far fewer players in the region. Nowadays we have 350 million players. That means, of course, that compared to China, everything is small. But if you compare to North America, it's bigger than North America. North America has 250, give or take, million players, and we are now at 350. If you consider the like percentage of people who play here in the region, it's more than 82%. In some countries, it's like 87%. So basically, everybody plays. So it's really like a very engaged community of players. It's a very engaged fan base in general, because people are like really into whatever they consume. So like whatever they are playing, whatever they're watching. So Brazilians in particular are very special because of that, but Latin Americans in general are also like this. And that's like a superpower that we have when you have an event here in the region, because the level of engagement that you can generate if people like your game is much higher than in other regions. One big difference, like compared to some regions, of course, there are variations all over the region. There are like the two biggest markets in Latin America are Brazil and Mexico. They, in terms of the number of players, Brazil is bigger, but in terms of expenditure, in terms of how much we generate for game companies in terms of profit, these two countries, they keep alternating. Nowadays, Brazil is above Mexico, but it depends more on exchange rates than anything else. It's very similar. This means that the price per user in Brazil is a little smaller than in Mexico, but also Brazil has a far larger mobile base than Mexico. Mexico has a higher level of penetration for consoles than Brazil. To put this in numbers, it's like in Brazil, it's like almost 60% of the games are played on mobile, and 31% not of the games. 60% of the players play using mobile, 31% use console, and 30 something percent use PC. So it's a mobile first country, whereas in Mexico the percentage for consoles and PC is higher. It's closer to 50%. So that's a big difference between the two countries. But in terms of development, Brazil is way larger. We have now 1,200 studios in the country. Most of them are small studios, indie studios, but there are quite a few medium-sized studios in the region too. There are a couple of big companies, and we don't really have publishers. There are some publishers, but they're very small. This means that for Chinese companies, it's like a big opportunity to find great talent, affordable talent because of the exchange rates, a good way to also connect with the rest of the Americas. Like there are studios that are very well prepared to and that work with the US and Europe. We are in a favorable time zone for both Europe and the US. We are kind of in between. And we are already very used to working with all the Western countries and everything. So for publishers, it's really an opportunity, and of course for studios too, because it's not China, but it's pretty big.
Gotcha. Those are very impressive numbers and aspects that you shared. You talk about the growth of the market. You talk about the engagement of players playing different, platforms. You talk about development. You talk about publishing. So if you may have point one thing, what has changed the most in the last 5 years for this market?
Well, the development market has increased a lot, and so has the number of players and the willingness to spend in games too. Even though it's mobile is stronger, PC is growing again, and Yuzu has just released a new research showing how much PC games have increased in the region, because you have to understand there are lots of players, but generally speaking, on average, Brazilians don't have as much money as the rich countries. So what most studios and publishers do here is to localize the price, and when they do that, they sell more. So for instance, Game Pass here in Brazil is very big. There are many subscribers to Game Pass, and people are more and more also buying games on Steam. So it's not that it has changed, but it has continued to grow. In terms of the whole market, I think the biggest change is especially on the production side, the level of maturity of the companies has increased a lot, has increased significantly in the last 5 years.
Gotcha. I think that's really good, because growth for a lot of aspects means opportunities, right? I think you also briefly touched base a few opportunities, but I do wanted to kind of dive in that area a little bit. When international companies look at Latin America, and especially when companies from China look at the region, where do you see the biggest real opportunity right now?
There are two sides, as I mentioned. There is the player base, consumers, which is a big and still untapped market by China, especially. I think most of there are many Chinese companies that are not here yet. There are some that are starting to come. Tencent, of course, has a connection to the region, but it's not as strong as in other regions. We have, a few companies that are like NetEase. NetEase is slowly starting to recognize the region, but the numbers are already like very big in terms of depending on the kinds of games. There are many, Brazilians that are playing a lot of Chinese games, and still the region doesn't get a proportionate attention from the companies. So it's more like the opportunity is there, and if the companies pay attention, I think they could make more out of it. And then again, on the production side, many studios with great ideas and great projects, great capabilities that need publishers. And China has very big and very good publishers. So I think there is a lot of opportunity there.
Gotcha. So you talk about the player side, you talk about the publishing side. How about the local partnership from the publishing or the ecosystem perspective?
I mean, here there is a lot of will to make Brazil become like a big hub for game development, and that will is translated not only like from the side of Abra Games, which is the National Association for Game Developers, us as Gamescom Latam, but also from the government. There is a lot of willingness and openness from the Brazilian government, especially a few regions, to collaborate and do something with companies. The will is here, so there are a lot of good opportunities on the table. We have recently passed a law. It's like almost 2 years now, 1.5 year, 2 years, which is like a law for video games, establishing what video games are and what kind of support they can receive. There are structures for the support and investment in video games. There is support for exports from like export agencies and this kind of stuff. And I'm pretty sure like if China and Brazil work together, we could very soon develop like a bilateral treaty for the co-production of games using incentives and support from both sides. Also because Brazil is already part of the BRICS, as is China, and there are already in place some special status for games that are Brazilian and games that are Chinese, but this is not being used very well. So I think, and that's an invitation also to the Chinese government to come here, and we can facilitate as an event, as the biggest industry event in the region, we can facilitate that encounter between the Brazilian government and the Chinese government to make the most from the strengths that we have on both sides. And Brazil and China already collaborate a lot on so many different levels: infrastructure, technology. I mean, the opportunity is there, the will is there. It's just like connecting both sides, and I totally believe that could be done in a short period of time.
That's very exciting to hear. You talk about company level, you talk about government level, so on and so forth. I wonder, do you have for example, a concrete example? For example, I wonder what does a smart first step usually look like, for those type of collaborations?
I think in terms of government, it's like a treaty. It always starts like something like this, or a memorandum of understanding to establish partnerships using, there is money here, there is money in China, there are companies that can be put together. That's the government side. From the point of view of associations, for instance, I know that there is a big association and we work with SIGA already. We've been partnering with SIGA for a long time. We could try to do more on the SIGA and Abra Games front to develop like a special relationship, which could be accompanied by some kind of understanding between the export agencies from both sides. And finally, from my own perspective, I'm totally open to talk to whoever is interested in developing, the region. So and Gamescom Latam is a place of encounter for these kinds of conversations. So I'm here. I'm open. And when I say I'm here, it's not only me. It's like we are partners with the Germans too, from Gamescom in Cologne and from Gamescom Asia in Thailand. So I'm totally open.
That's really good to know. I definitely would love to know more about the Gamescom Latam. But before that, I do have one kind of opposite question that I would love to hear your insights. You mentioned about there are so many opportunities. You mentioned about the market is growing from both player side and development side. But for some companies like Chinese companies, what's the most common mistake the foreign companies will probably make when they first approach Latam?
I think the most basic mistake is not to localize prices. And that has been proved. I mean, I know people who have worked with big Chinese companies that are already present here. And at first they were very skeptical about lowering prices. And when you lower prices and the game is good, you'll sell more. Not only you sell more, you sell more than you would sell if you kept the prices more elevated. So that's the most common mistake. And the second, I think the most basic mistake is about it has to do with localization and not having an actual presence and communication with the local communities. Then what I mean is creators and an actual presence.
Yep. So I guess when you talk about localization, you're not simply talking about the language translation, right? You're talking about get to know more about the local market, the local players, and basically adjust and iterate the business model to really accommodate their actual, purchasing behaviors and purchasing powers, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't expect the same product to behave the same way in different markets. And you have to understand not only how to promote, but what kind of titles would work, and with what kind of communities you have to work with, and that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. And so a lot of times, those companies, no matter from China, from outside of the world, they definitely need a first step, right, to get to know more about the Latin market. So that actually brings us naturally to Gamescom Latam. Why should Gamescom Latam matters to international companies per your perspective, and especially for example to Chinese game companies beyond just being another event on their calendar?
Well, it's really the door to the region. And as I said in the beginning, it's a very international event. I mean, the B2C side is mostly Brazilians, just like all the events, but the B2B side is really international. We have lots of people coming from North America, from Europe, but not so many from Asia. I know it's far, but so is, Cologne, and and Chinese companies go there. If you think that you're going to meet the same kind of companies there that you will meet here, you're mistaken. There are many companies that do not travel. There you meet mostly like the European companies. So even when we say like Latam, it's really Latam because of course we have more Brazilians because we are based in Brazil, but we have companies from Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Peru, Mexico, and so on. So Latin America is really coming here. So if you have any intention of doing something with the region, that's basically the place to be. And on top of that, like, and that applies for both, companies that are looking for studios to work with and companies that are looking for players. So we, just like the other Gamescoms, we are also like B2B and B2C, so we can do it all. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, if I may want to know a bit more about the value that those companies can get from the Gamescom Latam, what actually two follow-up questions, if I may. So one is, what kind of company tends to get the most value out of coming?
Well, all all gaming companies. It depends on how they position themselves. One of the most important things is like to understand from our exhibitors what their goals are. So it depends. Like sometimes it's just like promoting a new title, and sometimes it's like establishing a relationship with creators. We have like thousands of creators in the show. Sometimes it's like establishing a campaign, like a broader campaign that starts with the event and then continues, because our company, like our holding company, is also a media company. So the company actually started as a pop culture portal, and then it started in the world of events with CCXP, which is the biggest Comic-Con in the world that takes place in São Paulo too. And now the company is expanding to other markets with the Comic-Con. We have a Comic-Con in Mexico, and next year we are going to have a Comic-Con which is called also CCXP in Seoul in Korea. So we are like really good with everything related to pop and geek culture. We are like the biggest in the region. So sometimes it's not only the event, but a broader approach to the market as a whole. So it really depends on what the company wants. And in terms of actually reaching these goals, we have like a lot of media. We have a lot of, this year we're expecting 150,000 attendance to the show. I mean, you have to come and see how much we can deliver.
Yeah, just purely hearing the number, that's very impressive already. Yeah, that's why I also want to know a little bit more about the history of Gamescom Latam. I know the event in the region is relatively young, right, comparing with other events, and then the Gamescom, in Germany, for example. So could you tell me a little bit of history about that?
Yes.
Like how did you make it happen?
We actually started with another event 15 years ago, which is called Big Festival. Big Festival used to be a B2B only event. B2B speaking sessions, it was more it was closer to the GDC or to Gamescom Dev, which used to be called DevCon. And we started when there was almost nothing here, and we started to go to international events and show how much potential the region had, and then eventually the publishers and the studios started to come here, and they started to meet the studios here. For you to have an idea, like 15 years ago, there were 20 studios in Brazil, so almost nothing. And in 15 years, it's 1,200 studios. So that was a huge increase in terms of development, and we've been playing a part in that for a long time. After COVID, we decided to expand the event to the B2C area and to start to, have like the booths and the activations for the general audience. And we've been like growing very, very fast since then. So in 2022, we already did like the first edition, also with including a B2C area. And that has continued. So we did 2 editions of Big Festival, already including a B2C area. And then we did a joint venture with Gamescom. So Gamescom is a joint venture between Big Festival and Gamescom. And that's how we created Gamescom Latam. So it's not that we are young as Gamescom Latam, but we've been around for quite some time, especially on the B2B space. So yeah, it's going to be the 3rd edition of Gamescom Latam, but the 15th edition of Big Festival, which still exists inside Gamescom Latam. Big Festival is our indie games competition. So before it used to be the whole event, and now it's just the indie games competition that happens inside Gamescom Latam.
Gotcha. That makes lots of sense to me now. Yeah. So you guys have been on the market for many years. It's just like it has been growing together with the region, right?
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, and think by adding the B2C, it makes more complete, makes more attractive to everyone from outside of the region. So when you look at what has become, as you mentioned, there are very impressive numbers in terms of attending, engagement, and then the business that has been created through attending the event. What feels most meaningful to you among those success?
Well, to create the opportunity for people to develop cool games. That's what matters. I mean, of course, also bring, because there is a side of Latam, which is like we are like here in the south of the world, kind of left out. So bringing new games that are going to be released in the event. So in a way, it's like a way to summarize it would be to say the most meaningful part is to actually connect the region to the rest of the world. And it has been happening, and it's increasing exponentially. So that's very nice.
Gotcha. That's so cool to hear. So I actually wanted to make this a little bit more personal. I wanted to talk a little bit more about you. So how did you build your own journey over time, and how did you eventually arrive in your current role?
Well, I actually come from movies. I'm a movie producer and director, and I know the value of festivals because being an older industry, more established industry in a way, even though it's smaller than video games nowadays, I know that the festivals are very important to create value, because there are too many products around, so you have to create value around what is good. Different levels of value there. When I say value, it doesn't necessarily mean only like very commercial games. Sometimes very niche games are also very valuable for a niche community, and they can be very profitable in that specific, it's a matter of scale. They are not huge, massive games, but they are profitable, and studios can do a good job like this, but also like big, massive games. So festivals are there as a way to create value for the cool games, as a way to create the engagement of the community, and as a way to actually propagate like the value and engagement, as almost like we were a platform to produce the success of a specific game. I know that coming from movies, and more people are realizing that that's the way to establish an event. And that's why, people have asked me, but why do you keep the B2B if now you have the B2C, which is way bigger and everything? But it's really like the B2B is where everything is made. So we have a deeper connection with the brands because they come to our show to make money with, cool studios and cool developers. So I had this perception, but going back to your question, why did I start it? I started working with a long time ago with Short Films Festival, and then I worked with, I developed a couple of music festivals, and I knew that, being from probably the first, or one of the first generations that was already born with a joystick in their hands, I knew that everything was going to, go towards games. And I said, how come there is no equivalent for games here in the region? And then I decided with a bunch of other people to create the event, and then the rest is history.
Cool. Yeah, that's very good to know. I think I'm also curious to know, as the CEO of Gamescom Latam now, what part of your earlier work still shapes how you lead the organization today?
Well, it's our DNA. We are here to, and that's, I think, as long as I'm here leading the event, that's what we do. We are trying to develop the region. And it's actually funny because when I started to talk for the first time with AAA studios and publishers and so on, I was a bit afraid that it was going to be very different, like the conversation with indie studios and big studios. But it's not really that different, because again, it's a different scale, but everybody's trying to, at least the smart people, they are trying to develop the region. If you don't develop the region, then nothing really happens. You can have a good title, but then the next one is going to fail. So developing the region means, creating the incentives for people to develop cool games and to play cool games. So it's similar, and I think that's what I learned, what I had in mind in the beginning, and that still applies to today.
Gotcha. Some of our audience from the channel, they are young professionals in the gaming. They're actively designing and then planning for their career. So I think this question is more for them. Now, looking back to your career, what prepared you for this role in ways you didn't realize at the time?
I have no idea. I don't know. You try, make mistakes, and then you correct the mistakes, and then you make more mistakes, and then try to make different mistakes. That's my motto. But what prepared me, I don't know. I think my experience as a producer has been essential for, and not only as a producer, because I produced feature films since I was very young, and feature films are very long projects, and so I know how to work with long projects, and it takes a year to prepare an event that lasts 5 days, 4.5 days, and these freaks out lots of people, but I guess I'm quite used to it, because it's like, for a film you take like 5, 6, 7, 8 years to make a film, and it can all go down the toilet when the film opens. So yeah, I think the only way to learn something is to do it, and to learn from your mistakes, I guess, and to be obsessive. Basically, I'm a very obsessive person, so when I want to do something, I keep insisting until it happens. Sometimes it doesn't happen the way I thought, and sometimes in the way it becomes something completely different. But if you don't have like that, drive, that will, it's very difficult to do anything. I mean, you can do things, but you cannot do like projects. If you're waiting for somebody to find you and to understand how much of a genius you are, I mean, sometimes it works, I guess, but it's very unlikely. Very unlikely.
That's really good. That's really good to know. Yeah. It's hustle, right?
It's 98% hustle.
Yep.
And 2% of, ingenuity, or something. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Gustavo, thank you so much. This was really great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.